Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining me for this explainer. When most of us hear the word democracy, our minds immediately jump to one very specific place, right? The ballot box. We think about elections, political parties, campaigning, and of course, that fundamental right to vote. But today, especially in an era where global economic anxieties are, let's be honest, running incredibly high, we're going to unpack a highly provocative concept from the Indian philosopher and social theorist P.R. Sarkar. He proposed an idea that really challenges our conventional understanding of freedom and how a society ought to be structured. Sarkar argued that true freedom isn't found just in the voting booth. Actually, he said it's found in the marketplace and the workplace. He believed that political democracy is fundamentally incomplete without a massive shift toward what he called economic democracy. Right out of the gate, this forces us to ask a pretty foundational question. Is the right to vote truly sufficient if you literally don't know where your next meal is coming from? We are so used to defining a successful democratic society purely by whether or not they hold free elections, but Sarkar asks us to pause for a second and consider a much more grounded human reality. He argued that having political democracy without having economic security is basically an unfinished project. So let's look a little closer at why he felt so strongly about this. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Sarkar's core critique, the limits of political voting. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. Sarkar took an impartial look at modern political systems across the globe, and he identified a recurring, highly problematic pattern. He observed that political democracy in its modern form is very easily manipulated by economic elites or what he sometimes referred to as pseudo-intellectuals. He drew a sharp and honestly fascinating contrast to explain this. Political democracy gives you the right to choose your leaders. And hey, that is a vital right, for sure. But economic democracy provides the actual physical means to live a dignified life. By contrasting these two, Sarkar showed that merely having the right to cast a ballot doesn't automatically grant you the resources you need to actually survive, let alone thrive. Think about the practical, day-to-day reality of this dynamic. Sarkar observed that when economic power concentrates into the hands of just a few people, and he noted this happens whether you're under systems of state capitalism or private capitalism, political power inevitably follows the money. If a citizen is unemployed, deeply in debt, or completely dependent on someone else just to survive the week, their political freedom is severely compromised. When you are constantly worrying about keeping a roof over your head or putting food on the table, abstract political philosophies tend to take a back seat. In that state of deep vulnerability, a vote can be easily bought, coerced, or simply rendered ineffective by the sheer crushing weight of economic inequality. The immediate need for survival always overrides long-term political considerations. A democracy that ignores the economic reality of its citizens is just a decorative facade. It's an uncompromising visual, isn't it? Sarkar viewed political rights that exist without a solid economic reality as essentially meaningless to the everyday citizen. It might look like a beautiful, functioning building from the outside, complete with grand elections and fiery political debates, but there is no real structural integrity holding it up from the inside. The foundation is just hollow. Section 2. The 4 requirements. Building economic democracy. To move beyond that decorative facade we just talked about, Sarkar didn't want to just tweak the current system. He proposed completely rebuilding it from the ground up on 4 non-negotiable pillars. He argued that a society simply cannot call itself truly democratic unless every single one of these 4 pillars is firmly in place. These principles are meant to shift the foundation of society entirely toward the material and social well-being of the population. So let's break down exactly how this new system would operate. The very first pillar is guaranteed basic necessities. Sarkar argued that the absolute first, non-negotiable right of any citizen is the right to the basic requirements of life: food, clothing, housing, education, and medical care. Now, what's absolutely crucial to understand here is how radically different this is from treating these necessities as mere market commodities. In a lot of modern systems, things like housing or medical care are treated as products, available only to the people who can afford them. Sarkar framed providing these as a fundamental societal duty, not a charitable handout, but a baseline right. If a society or a government cannot guarantee these absolute minimum requirements for its people, then according to Sarkar, it has completely failed its primary function. So the crucial point is, providing goods isn't enough if citizens lack the purchasing power to actually acquire them. And that brings us to the second pillar, purchasing power. Sarkar noted that, hey, you could have store shelves literally overflowing with food and clothing, but if the citizens don't have the money to purchase those items, the system is still fundamentally broken. Think of it kind of like a water cycle. If all the water pools at the very top of the mountain and freezes there, the valley below just goes dry. This pillar demands the creation of meaningful jobs and requires strict systemic checks to ensure that wealth continually circulates throughout the society rather than just continuously pooling at the very top of the economic ladder. Now, this flow of wealth leads directly into our third pillar, local control. Economic democracy heavily emphasizes radical decentralization. Sarkar envisioned a model where local economies are managed directly by the local people who actually live and work there. He argued strongly against economies being controlled by monolithic central governments or distant corporations. Because realistically, a board of directors sitting in an office building 3,000 miles away is simply never going to truly understand a local town's unique agricultural needs, its industrial landscape, or the specific cultural dynamics of its workforce. The whole idea here is that local people always understand local needs far better than a centralized, disconnected authority ever could. And finally, we have the fourth pillar, anti-exploitation. You can think of this as the protective barrier for the other three. Sarkar stated, there must be a systemic design meant to explicitly prevent the drain of wealth from one region or class to another. To put this in practical terms, imagine a rural town where precious resources are mined, but all the profits from that mining flow out to a corporate headquarters in another country, leaving the local town completely impoverished despite its immense natural wealth. Sarkar saw this as a fatal flaw. It is an absolute necessity to protect vulnerable local communities from having their resources, labor, and local wealth extracted by powerful outsiders. The wealth generated in a community must stay within and directly benefit that community. Section 3, a new economic mandate, from rights to responsibilities. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it illustrates the ultimate paradigm shift in Sarkar's philosophy. It requires a complete reimagination of what a government's primary responsibility to its citizens actually is. In the old paradigm, wealth represents power. Whoever has the most resources dictates the rules of society, and the economy operates largely to maximize profit. But in Sarkar's new paradigm, human needs represent the mandate of the economy. The entire economic engine is managed and fine-tuned specifically for the universal welfare of all rather than the profit of a select few. Sarkar firmly believed that when an economy is managed this way, when people are actually economically secure, they naturally have the time, the energy, and the freedom to become much more active, highly informed, and engaged citizens. True freedom, in this view, is a two-sided coin. Economic democracy isn't about getting rid of the government, and it certainly isn't about abandoning the political vote, no way. It's about empowering that vote by making the economy the primary driving concern of the society. We absolutely need political representation, but without a firm, guaranteed economic foundation for every single citizen to stand on, Sarkar argues that a political vote is rendered entirely powerless. It literally becomes just a whisper in the wind. A secure citizen is a powerful citizen. Which leaves us with this highly provocative, lingering thought to consider today. Are we really living in a true democracy if our basic economic survival is left entirely to chance? It's a fascinating lens through which to view our modern systems, and a deeply powerful reminder of how intimately connected our political freedoms are to our everyday economic realities. Take some time to really reflect on that question. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of P.R. Sarkar's economic democracy. I hope this sparked some new ideas for you, and I look forward to diving into our next topic with you soon.